Hello, everyone. This is Aubrey Lara from Each My Matters. I wanted to welcome you all to our TechStock Act informational webinar. We're very excited to have you all join us and are looking forward to an incredible TechStock Act event on October 6th. We're going to pass it off to Raquel from TechStock Act, and she will lead us through the webinar. Of course, and go through all of the housekeeping. But of course, know throughout the webinar as well as afterwards that if you do have any questions about Each My Matters and or TechStock Act, you can always reach out to me. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Raquel Goodrich, and I am the TechStock Act Director and Director of Digital Communications at the National Institute for Civil Discourse. Just a couple of housekeeping things. As you probably heard on the announcement, all the participants are currently muted. We're just going to keep everybody muted just to help minimize any background noise. We do welcome questions and hope that you have questions, so please go ahead and enter those in the chat box as they come up, and I'll be sure to address all of them before the end of the webinar. And then finally, just as an FYI, I am recording this webinar so that we can make it available to all of you and also to registrants that were not able to attend today. So today's agenda, what we'll be talking about is first I'm going to give you a background on creating community solutions, which is part of the National Dialogue on Mental Health. And I'll tell you a bit about the TechStock Act program. And then we'll talk about the really exciting stuff, which is the collaboration between TechStock Act and Each Mind Matters, as Aubrey mentioned, which is happening on October 6th this fall. And then finally, we'll do some, we'll go over some organizing tips for hosting TechStock Act to ensure that you guys have as much success as possible in utilizing the program and spreading the word to others. Before we do that, I'd love to hear and find out who you all are. So I had just a quick poll question. Let me launch that. And the question is, who are you? Obviously, I know that you're more than just these categories, but if you could, just go ahead and look at the different categories and just indicate which ones kind of best represent you for kind of who you're representing today. And this will just give me a sense of who's on the webinar so that I can prepare my remarks appropriately, especially when we get to the organizing piece. We'll have a few more votes coming in. I'll give you guys all just a couple more seconds here. Great. So it looks like we've got about 30% that are representing kind of the education sector, 29% other. If you do enter an other, just go ahead and put it into the chat box so that I have a better idea of who you are in terms of who you're representing today. And then we're split down the middle, 21% and 21% for mental health providers and other community-based organizations. Let me go ahead and share that so that you can see the results. And then let me just put my slides back up. So I mentioned I'm here with the National Institute for Civil Discourse. Just a little bit of a background about who we are. We help to fund the TechStock Act initiative. It's a part of our organization along with a collaboration with some other organizations, which I'll talk about in just a minute. We were created after the Gabby Giffords shooting that happened here in Tucson, Arizona. And it was at a time where the University of Arizona really wanted something good to come out of a horrific event. So the Institute was created in the days following the aftermath of the mass shooting that happened here in Tucson. And one of the reasons why the Institute has gotten involved in creating community solutions is to help to provide more information and kind of raise awareness on mental health as somebody had kind of fallen through the cracks, and that was the result of the shooting that happened here in Tucson. So that was part of the reason why we got involved, and then another reason was to help to just get communities together talking in different ways. So creating community solutions is part of the national dialogue on mental health. And so after the Sandy Hook tragedy, President Obama called for this national dialogue. Members of the Obama administration actually came to my executive director at the Institute for Civil Discourse and asked her to help lead the community organization effort behind the national dialogue on mental health. And so that is how creating community solutions was conceived. To date, the National Institute for Civil Discourse has worked with 6 other organizations in helping to support over 250 community dialogues on mental health. So what we've done is put resources together for communities to have these types of conversations, for them to come together and decide, what are some of the challenges of mental health in our community, what are our priorities, and then how can we best address those challenges. So to date, we've had a kind of 3-tier strategy. We've started with lead mayor-initiated cities. Sacramento, California was one of them, where we've had kind of day-long events that the mayor has helped host and put on to bring the community together to talk about those priorities. And then we've also had smaller community conversations where we've just had organizers on the ground that said, I want to do something in my community. I want to have this conversation, and so they've helped to organize those events. And then finally, we've had a youth-focused engagement, and that's what we're going to be talking about today with TechStock Act. So we know that 3/4 of all mental health problems present themselves before the age of 24. When we were doing our lead city conversations and community conversations, we were getting great turnout and we were getting good youth representation. But we also knew that most young people are not the type that's going to come to a town hall meeting on a Saturday. So the challenge for us was, how can we create a platform or a way to bring young people together and to get them talking about mental health? So it literally was on a steering committee call for creating community solutions where one of our staff members said, well, if you want to get young people talking about mental health, you need to do it through their cell phones because that's what they're always on. And that's literally how TechStock Act was born. So the idea with TechStock Act is that you gather people together. So even if you had like 100 people, you would break them into small groups. So you'd break them down into like groups of 3 to 4 people. And they would have one cell phone per group. On that cell phone, they text START to the number 89800. And you can actually do that today. The platform is up and running. And so you can literally right now take your cell phone and text START to 89800. What's going to happen once you text START into that number is you'll then receive a series of text messages that are going to lead you through a conversation on mental health. Now, obviously, you can walk through the text messages by yourself on your cell phone to kind of see how it works. But the best way to do it is to sit down with a couple of people and work through the discussion questions and the polling questions and be a part of the conversation. Just as a bit of background, TechStock Act was created not just by the Creating Community Solutions Steering Committee, but this was a real collaborative effort. We actually brought together a brain trust that consisted of mental health professionals, deliberative dialogue experts, social media experts, and young people. And this group worked together for months on a series of phone calls to really revise and refine the text messaging sequence or the script that you'll find today that's programmed into the cell phone. We also rely heavily on youth organizers and other community organizers to help to bring these TechStock Act conversations to groups. We know that we can't go it alone, and we also know that there are a lot of young people and a lot of people in different organizations that really understand the need for these conversations to happen and for young people to have these conversations. And so we've created a number of resources to help those youth organizers and community organizers be able to put on a TechStock Act and organize a TechStock Act. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. We also rely heavily on partners. And so Each Mind Matters is a partner of ours. And again, I'll talk a little bit about the collaboration in just a minute. But these are the different partners. The official partners are ones that are hosting a TechStock Act event with us this fall. And then we have promotional partners that help to spread the word amongst their networks about TechStock Act. So the best part about TechStock Act is the success that we are having, and that it really is getting young people to talk about mental health in a very interactive way that's very true to their nature and kind of the way that they're used to communicating, which is through their cell phones and through text messaging. So we have host 4 kind of nationwide TechStock Act events. We usually do a spring and a fall. This one is our 5th one coming up. And to date, we've had 27,500 young people who have participated in a TechStock Act conversation. We know through follow-up surveys that they're ethnically and geographically diverse. We know that we've had TechStock Act conversations in all 50 states. And then a part of TechStock Act is some social media interactions. And so when our participants go onto social media, we ask them to post selfies or to help to promote TechStock Act using the hashtag TechStock Act. And as a result of that and their help, we've had over 21.3 million impressions using that hashtag. The other thing that we've done is we've had an independent evaluation of TechStock Act. And this is really important for you to know if you're here representing, really anyone. If you're a mental health provider, if you're a teacher, if you're with a school administration, it's important to know that TechStock Act is not only a fun activity, but it is also an effective activity. So through this independent evaluation that we have conducted, we found that participating in TechStock Act leads to an increase in participants' ability to talk about mental health, their likeliness to seek additional information and implement information or skills that they learn or receive from TechStock Act. And then my favorite ones are, it increases their ability to recognize a peer in need and their ability to reach out to a peer in need. One of the most amazing things, when we first created TechStock Act, we really focused on getting young people talking about mental health and getting them thinking about ways that they could improve their own mental health. And the early feedback that we received from folks, from young people, was, this is great, and this is really helpful information for me to know. But I want to know what I should do if I'm the only person in the room when my friend has a mental health issue. And so we actually worked with our brain trust to create that segment of the conversation. So that way we're empowering young people and giving them the tools and the information that they need in order for them to be able to reach out to a friend that's struggling at that moment in time. The other thing that we learned out of our TechStock Act independent evaluation is that students or young people love it. They consistently report positive experiences based on the technology used by TechStock Act. If you are a teacher or someone in the classroom, feedback that we consistently hear is that they love the fact that they finally get to use their cell phones in the classroom and that they get to have an interactive activity. It's no longer kind of the teacher standing at the front of the room, but the cell phone becomes the facilitator. And so it's really encouraging those peer-to-peer conversations, which helps, it kind of gets them into a deeper conversation where they might share a little bit more because they're there with their friends, which helps them to open up and also to kind of rally around each other. So they've also said that they've had positive experiences based on the clarity of TechStock Act, the purpose, and the relevancy, usefulness, and quality of the TechStock Act content. One of the things that we found that's also very promising from the independent evaluation was we actually had the evaluators look at the data for participants that came into the conversation reporting little prior knowledge. So they said that they either had slight to no prior familiarity or knowledge about mental health. And so when we looked at what they reported at the beginning of the conversation, based on where they reported they were at the end of the conversation, they moved the furthest along the spectrum in terms of their being more familiar with the topic of mental health. They're knowing where to go to reference available resources. And then they also became more confident in their ability to recognize mental health issues in others. So for those that hadn't had that type of conversation before, it was even more meaningful. And then the best ways to engage youth. So what we asked them, as you can see, there were 9 different choices. And we asked them, what are the best ways to engage youth on the topic of mental health? And they kind of rank ordered these answers. Or rather, they picked their top 3 in rank order. So as you can see, the top one was face-to-face conversation. They then preferred social media. And then third was TechStock Act, followed pretty closely by school-sponsored activities. My favorite thing about this is that TechStock Act actually integrates the face-to-face conversation with social media. So we're utilizing both of those types of ways to engage youth through this one activity. And then if it's done in the school-sponsored activity, if it's done in the classroom, then really we've hit the top 4. All right. So the next thing that I wanted to talk with you all about is the plans for this fall. So as Aubrey mentioned, we are collaborating with Each Mind Matters on October 6th. This is actually going to be part of a nationwide conversation. TechStock Act will be available to everyone across the country. But we're really focusing October 6th on a statewide conversation in California. So in terms of our promotions, we're really looking for the state of California to really use October 6th as their day to help promote TechStock Act and to get young people in California talking about mental health. We are doing these other dates, which is October 5th. We're working with Active Minds for their National Day Without Stigma. And then we're doing another one on November 10th. And that's with the National Association for School Psychologists and 4-H National. TechStock Act will be available on those days as well. But really, again, we're really focusing on October 6th for the date in California. And one of the things that we're going to be doing on October 6th that's going to be different from some of the other days is we're going to be hosting a contest. So basically, anyone can sign their school, their college, their community organization up for this contest. And I have the little shortened bit.ly link at the bottom there in case you want to learn more. So the idea is you sign up for the contest, get a unique organizer code, and then you give that unique organizer code to your participants. On the day of the event, so on October 6th, there will be a text message where they can text their code into the TechStock Act platform. And that then gives them credit for their participation. The organizer that gets the most participants in their category will win either $1,000 or $500 to then be used towards their school, their college, or their nonprofit organization. So what you can do, there's really 2 things that you can do. The first is in my mind, one of the most important, which is to help organize TechStock Act events this fall. That can take place through a variety of different mechanisms. You can either do a large event if you have a large network in terms of, if you're a mental health organization or you're a school, you could host a school-wide event. Or you could literally just grab a couple of friends and sit down and text start into the number and participate in the conversation. And then second, you can help to promote TechStock Act. So you can connect us with people in your network that might be interested in hosting these types of conversations. So tips for getting organized. One of the things that I mentioned, and one of the first things that we always recommend people do, is to just go ahead and try it. So literally on your cell phone, I know you can't really have a discussion with yourself, but you literally can right now text START to the number 89800. And then what you do is you follow the prompt. So each time you get a text message, there will say at the bottom, it will say reply this word to get the next text. And so that's always the first step in terms of learning and understanding how the platform works. And then if it's something that you're interested in pursuing further, there's a couple of different ways that we recommend you go about organizing. So first is to form a team of people to help organize events, either for your organization or your school. So in terms of who you might want on that team, definitely think about young people, think about teachers, school club leaders, people that have lived experience, mental health professionals, healthcare and wellness professionals, and others. And then have your team try TechStock Act so that everybody understands how the platform works. Because it's such a new concept, it's always good to just have everybody try it out so they can see how the text messages come in and the types of discussion questions that the groups will receive. And then the next thing to do is just to make a plan. So, I talked about October 6th as kind of the Each Mind Matters day. So October 6th would be a great day to choose to do TechStock Act. But there's other days that are available. And so you can decide where you want to host it and when you want to host it. And then consider doing TechStock Act with existing groups. So TechStock Act works very well in a classroom. It works great during regularly scheduled clubs or even community meetings if groups are already coming together. It's a great captive audience. And then as an activity, even during a support group. So we had a mental health provider out of Delaware that decided she was going to bring TechStock Act to her therapy group. She works with adolescent boys who are all criminally charged, and they received a mental health diagnosis after being criminally charged. So they were in a mental health hospital. She had therapy groups with them, I don't know if it was once a week, but it was on a regular basis, and decided that for that week, she was going to do TechStock Act with her group. So these were boys that had been meeting together and talking amongst each other in their group previously. So she had them do TechStock Act, and she was amazed with what she found. She said that the use of the cell phones really, it made them much more comfortable talking because it's just such just a way that they prefer to communicate. It's a preferred communication method. And she said what ended up happening was they finally realized that they were not alone, that they were all struggling with different things that were all very similar. And what ended up happening is they came together and really kind of rallied together in a peer-to-peer support environment. And she was just astonished because this group had been meeting regularly. And yet it wasn't until they did TechStock Act, which was this conversation facilitated through a cell phone, that they were really, finally kind of opened up in the discussion and shared personal things and realized that they were each struggling with very similar things. So TechStock Act works very well, especially during a support group. So you could either do TechStock Act with existing groups, or you could create a special event. And so you literally could just pick a time and a place and then try to bring people together to have a TechStock Act forum. And you can have multiple conversations going at once. So again, if you have 100 people in the room, you would just divide them into smaller groups. I've actually done this at conferences where I've just divided them into smaller groups and have them do TechStock Act in their small groups. So those are kind of different organizing strategies that you could utilize. And then after you decide when you want to have it and where you want to have it, the next step is to really spread the word. And it always works well to do personal invitations. It's a new thing. And so if you're talking with somebody that it gives them a much higher comfort level, and they're more likely to show up. You can also reach out to existing groups that might be interested. And we have on our website, we have a number of flyers and business cards and different things that you can actually order, which we can send to you to help to advertise your event. And then last is just add fun. We've had lots of groups do they've had pizza at their events, they've added prizes, they've had drawings and raffles, that sort of thing. And so just make it fun. TechStock Act is definitely, it's a mental health awareness campaign, It really gets people talking about mental health, and it gets them to recognize what to do to help a friend in need. But adding fun and making it interactive and making it a fun place and an event to be at can definitely help to encourage people to attend. And then finally, we do have a variety of resources on our website. We have an organizing guide. We have the flyers that I mentioned. You can register for the contest. And we also have unique resources that we've put together specifically for schools. Lots of schools have questions around privacy and data use, and so we've created a lot of resources there. We also have draft parent letters and administration letters. So please feel free to check all of that information out. Just from the privacy perspective, we don't, all responses are anonymous. We don't store people's cell phone numbers. We're not going to sell their cell phone numbers. They're not going to hear from us again. So literally, they'll get the text messages for TechStock Act, and that will be it. And that's it for my presentation, but I do realize that I have some questions. And if you have any questions of things that I didn't answer, please feel free to go ahead and enter them into the chat box. I have one question that says, is this a texting program for individual help as well, or is it just meant to gather information about mental health and be used in or used in a group therapy session? That's a great question and one that we get a lot. This is really a mental health awareness conversation that works really well to be done in kind of those small group sessions. It's not a crisis text messaging platform. We have partnered with a group called Crisis Text Line, and we include that information at the end of TechStock Act. So if somebody realizes in the event, during the TechStock Act event, that they're really struggling with a mental health issue and that they really want to seek help, then they can go directly from their cell phone to Crisis Text Line and text into a counselor who will help them with the need that they have at that moment. Another thing that we do is we provide mental health resources. So at the end of TechStock Act, after they've had the conversation, many young people feel very energized to do more and to take action. So we actually send them a text message that takes them, it's at the link to our resources page. And so it includes information about, if they need help right now, that's the first and foremost thing. But it also includes stuff on how they can help to raise awareness and different ways that they can get involved. There's mental health first aid that we also include in there, as well as a variety of other resources that they can continue the conversation. One other question that I have, and feel free to keep sending questions in if you have them. It looks like one of the last ones are, does this address bullying in relation to mental health? Seems like this concept could be used to address the issue of bullying as well. That's also a great question. It doesn't directly talk about the topic of bullying, although I think that that does come up through the discussion questions as students and young people talk about it. We have actually talked about doing a TechStock Act specifically on bullying, and that could be a future conversation that we would make available. One of the things that we've talked about with TechStock Act, because of the success of this platform and how young people like using the text messaging to engage in the small group dialogue, is that we'd add different topics. And so bullying has absolutely been one that we've talked about adding. We've also talked about doing a more advanced TechStock Act script. So people that have already done it before, like the 27,000 people that have done it before, when they come back to do TechStock Act, they could actually go into a deeper conversation. So there's kind of the first conversation that really just helps to raise awareness and gets them talking about mental health and knowing how to help a friend. And then there will be a deeper conversation that really takes things from there and gets people talking about action and other, more detailed stuff about mental health. We are hoping to have that available this fall, that second advanced conversation. And so literally when you would go to TechStock Act and text in, your group would be able to decide if you wanted to have the more introductory conversation, or if you've done TechStock Act before, you could go into the more advanced conversation. Another question that just came in, can you text start from the same phone at different times? So the example is if you were to organize a morning group and an afternoon group, would you be able to go through TechStock Act program multiple times on their same phone? And the answer is yes. At any time, whenever you're ready from whatever phone, you simply text start. So the way that you would do that, if you had a group in the morning, you'd have them on the cell phone, they'd text start, and they would go through the entire sequence of text messages. It does take about 45 minutes to an hour for groups to go through it. It really just depends on how much they want to go into the discussion questions, and kind of how quickly they get through them. So if you did the morning group and they went through the text messaging sequence, and then you brought your afternoon group in from the same phone, you would just have in the two, it would be the 89800. And then for the message, you just would text start again. And that's how it would start the sequence back over again. And that seems to be it in terms of questions, unless anyone has any others that they'd like to send into the chat box right now. And Aubrey, did you have any kind of final comments? I do want to thank everyone for attending today. Please do go ahead and check out our website, look at the contest information. If you have any questions, please do feel free to contact Aubrey or myself. I'm more than willing to talk with you all about specific questions that you might have as things come up that you think of after today's webinar.
Yes, thank you all very much. And I know personally, I'm going to go home tonight and tell all of my friends and family about this and make them do it on October 6th.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. And if you do think of any other questions, please feel free to let Aubrey or I know, and we can talk you through all that. Thank you. Bye.